Over the next few days, you're going to be seeing a lot of Starminer videos, and most of them will be telling you what the game is. Now, I want to tell you what the game feels like and why it's actually different, because this is a genuinely original game, and that's the part that I have a feeling you're going to be most interested in. So yes, it's got a ton of features, which I'll touch on some of them. What really sets it apart isn't the features themselves. Instead, what's going on here is how all of that comes together. And that makes Starminer a very different beast to almost every other space game you've ever played. So here's the thing, I found this game to be genuinely hard to play. It didn't click with me for the first time, and the reason it didn't click is the most interesting thing about it. And once you see it, I think you'll know within about 30 seconds whether this is your kind of game or not. Now, to be perfectly honest here, I have played Starminer in the past, and there's always been that underlying theme to it, the thing I couldn't quite put my fingers on, so I dismissed it and just thought it's down to the fact I really need to learn this game. And over time, that feeling kind of faded, and I was thinking, yeah, that's just me, there's nothing really going on with this game, the game's good, and I was just having trouble getting to grips with it. But ultimately, I think it kind of come down to a single question, and it's something I kept turning over in my mind the longer I played. And it sounds like a very stupid question on the face of it. That question is, where am I? Not where's my ship, but where am I? Because the more I played this game, the less sure I was about that, and here's what I mean. So the game is pretty sparse when it comes to a tutorial, and when it starts, it hands you the ship, it tells you WASD, move you, it tells you which buttons turn your turrets on, that type of thing. You get more of it, of course, it serves the purpose a tutorial does, and well, really should serve. But something happens when you actually take the controls, because ultimately every instinct that I've walked in with from 40 years of other space games were all wrong, and all of them happening at once. And I want to make this very clear up front. None of this makes Starminer a bad game, quite the opposite in fact. It is a good game, and precisely for the reasons that initially made it frustrating for me. And let me walk you through that. I tried to fly the ship initially, just like a pilot, just like you'd expect. And when you get your hands on with the ship, you've got the whole thing with orientation, and it kind of made the controls fall apart, at least for me. So your controls are relative to the ship, of course. That means forward is the ship's forward. But the camera doesn't roll with you, and space doesn't have an up or down. So if you turn the ship over, the whole universe on your screen stays put exactly where it is, but suddenly left on your keyboard isn't left on the screen anymore. And yes, we've all played games like this, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the first point amongst a few that really started to hammer home what was different here. So it felt like I wasn't in direct control of the ship, and it started feeling a little bit more like an RTS where I actually had control indirectly of the vehicle. And so I tried to command it just like in an RTS. Right-click an asteroid, tell it to go mine, that type of thing. But there's no such command. So I moved on. I tried to aim and shoot like you might in an action game. But here's the thing, I have no control over the guns. You can't touch them in any way. All you can do is switch them on and now off, and well, that's it. And that's the feeling. You've got these 3 different ways of playing a space game, and well, Starminer just isn't like that. It's very much its own thing and doesn't follow what we've seen previously. And what that means is it doesn't feel like you've got a typical space game here. It doesn't really feel like you're sitting in the pilot's seat of the ship. It doesn't feel like you're commanding the ship from above like you might in an RTS. And it doesn't feel like you're guiding the weapons that you actually fire. There's also a few other elements to this. There's no top-down view like you might get in an RTS. In fact, you can't issue commands to your ships like you would in an RTS. So the game clearly shares some RTS-type traits, but it's not an RTS game. You also, the way you control your ship is somewhat unusual. It's not like Elite Dangerous where you're sitting in the pilot's seat and moving it around. Think of it instead as more like controlling a drone. You have WASD as well as Q&A, allowing you 6 degrees of freedom on your movement. Hold down Shift, use the same keys, and it rotates you along the same axis. There's also a real nice Newtonian flight model here, so press W, start moving, you get your velocity, release it, and you'll keep drifting in that direction. Unless, of course, you have the flight assist mode on. And due to the way that the controls work, they're not at rapid pace. You won't be doing some dramatic dogfighting maneuvers here, because it doesn't feel like you're the pilot sitting inside the ship. It feels instead like you're flying a drone, and those of you with real-world drone pilot experience will understand exactly what I'm talking about here. The bottom line then is that this isn't an RTS and it's not an Elite Dangerous style space sim. Instead, it inhabits the ground somewhere in between. And that's what makes it feel very different to what we've seen before, a very different type of space game. Because there is another layer to this. Not only do you have access to the ship you're currently selected and inhabiting, you can click via the in-game environment on any other ship in the game and the camera will automatically flip to that. You're now controlling that ship, or if you click on the space station, you'll be controlling that station. In other words, you're not a commander or a pilot walking between the different command posts. You're not in X4 teleporting between the different ships. You're just, essentially maneuvering your attention from one machine to another. And I think this is all very important. I've spent nearly 6 minutes talking about this for one very key reason, because I believe it's the foundation upon which this game is built. And let's be very clear here, choose a space station that you can't control, and controlling objects is so fundamental to this game that the game actually has to tell you in big bold text that you can't control this particular object. So this took me a while to grasp, this whole concept. It's not that you're a pilot, it's not that it's an RTS game, it's that you're simply moving your attention from one location to another, from one object to another. And that really does change how you play this game. For example, want to go mining, head on over to the asteroid, you can scan it, but make sure your ship's scanners are orientated towards the asteroid. You don't directly fire the scanners yourself, you just switch them on. You then need to orientate your ship towards the asteroid so that it does the scan, because it won't orientate itself. Same for mining. Enable your mining lasers, your mining turrets, but well, nothing may happen. You may be near an asteroid, you may select the asteroid, but they won't actually fire. In fact, you have no direct control over the turrets whatsoever. You can just enable them, disable them, and select what they need to target, but they won't do anything unless the target is within their arc of fire. And in order for that to happen, you need to orientate the ship manually. This won't happen on its own. So like I say, it's the middle ground between issuing commands, RTS style, and controlling the ship yourself like you might in other space games. And why this works so well when it comes to Starminer is because it allows you to build up a massive fleet, a massive operation of, industry. In other words, it's not like X4, where you're this character and you're hopping between different ships and different stations and you're building this industry. In Starminer, it feels very much like you are the industry itself, and you're able to hop your focus between the different parts of the machinery of that whole industrial empire. And this industry can build of absolutely anything. In fact, you build it yourself. Most of the things you build will start from hulks, and then you add nodes and other modules onto these, building ever larger ships until the fact that they can become entire stations. And these will serve different functions and different purposes. Also, pretty much everything in the game is physicalized. So shoot some chunks of ore off an asteroid and your drones will go out and collect them up. You'll see them picking up each individual piece and bringing them back to the cargo hold on board your ship. Those will then need to be transported individually via the drones to whatever station you're selling that ore to. And as you're building up your empire, you'll move between building small little ships for different tasks, right up to massive stations that serve industrialized functions. And then there's the heat mechanic, which I've touched on in a previous video. I don't want to deep dive into it too much in this video. Do check out the video at the end of this one so you can watch more on that. But essentially, the bigger you get, the more powerful you get, the more attention the galaxy will pay towards you and start really pushing back at you. So then, is this game any good? And more to the point, are you gonna like it? Well, honestly, it's not the right question, at least not for this video, and that's the reason why I've spent pretty much the entire time explaining how this game feels rather than just giving you a checklist of features, because ultimately, I really do feel that when it comes to Starminer specifically, how it feels is just as important as what it does, and that feeling is quite hard to describe, but here's the best I can do for you. Imagine you're building a massive industrial empire. That empire is represented by hundreds of different machines that are located in space. You can control these machines, you inhabit them, but you only control them in part. And to be very clear here, you can pilot them, you can maneuver them from A to B, you can turn on various different components. That might be your turrets, it might be your scanners, but some of the things like the turrets are fully autonomous. You don't get to fire them directly, you just enable them, orientate them towards your target, and they will fire. So like I say, it's like a living machine which you then direct. And as you go, you continuously build upon that machine, making it bigger and more powerful and more industrialized. That's the best way I can explain a Starminer. Hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea of what it's all about. And if you want more details on how the heat system works, the heat mechanics, then do check out the other video on the screen right here. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.